everyone, and welcome once again to the ever-alluring and addictive comic book vault. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Steve.
And Steve is with me today, once again. Steve has never been on camera before, and Steve has done one vault before. We reviewed Hush together, and now he's back again to help me review Batman Venom. And this was written by Dennis O'Neil, with art by...
Van Eden, I think his name was.
And pencils by Russell Braun. I guess, yeah, he just did the layouts, Von Eden, and then pencils by Russell Braun. And then this came out in 91, so this is the precursor to Knightfall, to all the Bane stuff. And I had no idea, Steve, that that the Venom drug existed before Bane did, and that Santa Prisca was set up before Bane was set up, and that the first person we actually saw take the drug was Batman. This was absolutely fascinating to finally read, especially going back and reading it after all of that stuff. I thoroughly enjoyed this. What do you think of this, Steve?
I thought it was great. I mean, it has one or two issues thematically, but I thought the main plot was great. And it has some really great references. Like we said before, the new edition doesn't come with an introduction by Paul Dini, but you can probably track that down in interviews or something.
Yeah.
But when this was first released in trade, he was talking about how he wrote this story in 3 drafts. One time was in an old 70s comic, one time was another one-shot with Batman, and this was the 3rd time where DC finally started embracing story arcs, and he had a chance to really tell the story. And while this was coming out in trade, they were crafting Knightfall, which is also 3 parts. And it's funny, because a lot of the stuff that happens in this book happens in Knightfall. Like, Alfred quits in this book and comes back, just like he does in Knightfall. And the side effects of Venom happen to Bane in Knightfall, just like they happen here with Batman. They even go to Santa Prisca before that. And the cool thing is, Santa Prisca was set up even before this book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Thomas Wayne was in Santa Prisca helping poor people and hurricane-affected people while Martha was pregnant with Bruce.
See, I always think I know things about Batman, and then I talk to Steve, and then I think I don't know anything about Batman anymore whatsoever. What's cool is that all of the stuff that happens in Knightfall that you're describing that also happens in this doesn't feel too much, I don't think, like retread, because I think Denny O'Neil was really smart in making this a flashback story that happens really early in Batman's career. So all of that stuff that would happen again, I think, makes a lot of sense to come back, you know, and happen a second time. There are a lot of things that Batman does in this and that happen to Batman that, had this been a, like, modern Batman story, had it been taking place during the regular continuity of the early 90s, I would have questioned it more than I did here. I think it's really important that this is supposed to be as early in his career as it is.
Right, and that's kind of the problem with DC advertising that book, is that they don't say this is an early Batman story.
Yep.
When Legends of the Dark Knight was coming out, it was meant to be in between Long Halloween and Year One, the early Batman years.
Mm-hmm.
So Batman makes a lot of mistakes in this. He's not as balanced as he is. He's not as calm as he is, so he does a lot of things you wouldn't expect.
But the nice thing is, reading it, they're smart enough to give you a narration box right at the beginning that tells you that it was many years ago. So at least you know it's early, and then there's a lot of clues. You know, Harvey Dent isn't Two-Face yet. You know, Gordon is still a police captain and not a commissioner. And I really like how O'Neil writes the interplay between Batman and Gordon, and how their relationship is so different from what it is when he's commissioner.
Right. My favorite scene with Gordon was probably when Gordon was yelling at Batman for getting too personal while he was on the drug, because he mentions, how is the family? And Gordon snaps at him and says, we agreed to keep this as professional as possible. And right then and there, you know that they're trying to play it straight. And there's a scene where Batman was supposed to kill Gordon because he's high off of this drug. And before he kills him, he's actually sitting there talking about Gordon's bad habits and Gordon's stiffness. And it's interesting because Gordon is like Bruce's straight man, where Gordon has his own addictions with, like, his cigarettes and his addiction and obsession with his job and tracking down criminals, but he doesn't let any of his habits get in the way of doing his job right, and that's Batman's problem in this book.
Yeah,
So they
that's
have like
right.
a nice parallel there.
Yeah, I really like that part where he's first gotten really hyped up on that drug, and it's when he finally puts the batsuit on again, and he goes to Gordon and he tells Gordon that he should get off of cigarettes because they're so addictive, and you can tell just looking at the panel that it's not even occurring to him how obviously contradictory he's being, because he's already really addicted and high on this drug. And I think that this is, again, being an early Batman story, and that's how you'd have to tell this. This is very much all about Batman figuring out what his limits are, and that's always a theme in Batman, where Batman's always. That's the thing that makes him so different from other people, is that he pushes himself so hard. And boy, if I had a nickel for every Batman story where Alfred told him that he hadn't slept in 3 days, there's that's in here, and him lifting too much weight and all that kind of thing. I really like how O'Neill opens this book. And maybe we should start talking about this somewhat more linearly. I like how he opens the book and kind of gets us right into it, and calls me at least to attention right away. Where within the first just few pages of the book, Batman can't save a little girl, and she ends up drowning because he can't lift enough rocks, and he's grappling with the fact that he's just a man and not a super being. And then he goes to the Batcave and he's trying to see if he can lift that much weight, and he actually injures himself doing that. Right? Yeah, it's so effective.
There's also that great part where they keep calling attention that Batman's code to open Batcave is the time his parents died.
Yeah.
And when the little girl dies, he makes her a promise that he's not going to let her die, but he lets her down. So part of his obsession with getting stronger is because he broke one promise and he doesn't want to break another to his parents. There's like a nice parallel going between his origin and what's going on with him right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. This is, I think, some of the strongest Batman and Alfred I've seen, and of course you've read a lot more than I have, so you might be able to think of better examples than I. But I really like the part when he's gotten really hyped up on those drugs, where he stops wearing the Batsuit, and Alfred tells him that he thinks that he's quit wearing it because he's ashamed of what he's become, and that he's now not worthy of the Batsuit.
Right.
That's a great scene.
Back on, he's a totally different person. He even goes as far as torturing a criminal before he talks, and the only reason that he stopped is because a car came in trying to kill him. So it's pretty crazy to see what Batman is going to do while he's hyped up on this drug. He tortures, he comes close to killing, he even gets revenge at the end. It's not even so much as stopping a criminal as much as it's getting revenge.
That's true. Yeah. Let's kind of get into the crux of how this starts. Did you buy that even in the situation that he's in, where he feels so bad about letting this little girl die, that he would be so quick to go ahead and take these drugs? I bought it to a degree, but I also wondered why he wasn't questioning the source a little more than he was, given that the source was the little girl's father, and he was very clearly not even kind of bothered by the fact that his daughter died, and I thought it was very strange that Batman didn't call that into question.
Right, and you see from the beginning of the book, he's using more detective work than he is using brains, so you think he would pick up on that. Initially, I didn't buy that he would just take the drug like that, but I liked so much where they were going with the drug that I didn't mind it as much.
Yeah, that's how I was too, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a contrived way to get a premise going, but the premise pays off.
Yeah, so it's covering a multitude of sins there. Yeah, I mean, you could very easily say, and perhaps the idea was that Batman is like so upset about this that he's kind of not using his brains the way he usually would, that he's a little bit off center, and I still think it's a little bit contrived, but it's all right. Maybe not so much that he wouldn't. I mean, maybe I could buy that he wouldn't pick up on the way the guy is acting, but the fact that he would pick up a foreign pill that he doesn't know what it is and put it in his mouth, I had a tough time with that.
Yeah, I mean, Deus Ex tries to cover tracks a little bit, because Alfred comes in and says, you ordered this book about toxology, but he doesn't read it, so he was at least trying to learn about it. but still, I don't think he would eat it and then research what could happen. I think he would research before trying it.
Yeah, and he's even got that narration box where it's like, wow, this isn't like me. Why am I taking this without looking into it first? I shouldn't do that, and then it just goes on. You know what I mean?
Like, anyway, it's strange.
Yeah, that was a little bit out there. But then I don't know. Him on the drug was. I mean, at least it wasn't like a forced thing, right? Like, this wouldn't have been anything like as interesting if someone had made Batman take this drug and then we saw, what's Batman like on drugs? Like, it's not that thing where he's not himself, right? I mean, he's not because he's on drugs.
This is a real human addiction.
But we're talking about a consequence for a choice he made, and so then it works okay.
And like I mentioned before, the introduction isn't in this book, but in the introduction, Dennis O'Neil says that the most human thing a person can have is addiction, and to him, Batman's the most human superhero. So when you see some of the other characters, like here, like the Doctor and the General, who have these obsessions and these addictions to either proving themselves as a great general or proving themselves as a genius, they're not sympathetic because they're not being very humane. Batman, on the other hand, was taking this drug because he had good intentions at first. So it's more human because he's overcoming something that happened to him because of the consequence of a good choice. Like, he wanted to save the girl. It wasn't so much that he was greedy and wanted to stop all crime. It's just he felt bad for not saving the girl. It was a good intention, and it was a mistake, and he rectified it at the end.
Yeah, and that's what makes him likable, and that's why he's still able to be our hero. Also, because, you know, he manages to get over it. I really like how long it takes him to get through all this. I think O'Neil does a really good job of. This needed to be 5 issues. I'm glad it's not any shorter than it is, and I'm glad that it's not like, okay, he's addicted to this for a couple issues and then the rest of it's detective work. He's got a good long time, and there's a lot of time that spans this book, which works in a story that is set so far back in time, where he takes 30 full days to detox himself in the Batcave, and we see. I think that there's some really great panel layouts going on there, and some really good organization of scenes where he's in the Batcave trying to detox, and Alfred keeps trying to get him to leave earlier, but he won't. But he won't do it because he's trying to make sure he gets all this stuff out of his system. And then in between, interlaced with that, is all of the stuff that the bad guys are doing while Batman's out of commission, and that was all like really strong organization, I thought.
Yeah, and just to speak to the art a little bit, that panel of Bruce in the cave with his mask off, with the full beard and this feral look, that was a really powerful image.
Yeah, I actually put that on for our wallpaper.
Oh yeah, it's a great picture. And I did have 1 or 2 problems with this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Not so much the premise, but what Batman does at the end, where he says he's going to the island because they gave him this drug and they made him addicted. And at the end, he doesn't so much as decide that he's going to try and stop all drug cartels as much as he's glad that he stopped people that hurt him. So it feels like he's going too much for revenge. Like, it started with a good intention, but then it ended with something that was a bit more selfish. So that seemed a little bit strange to me. Like, Batman never once mentions a little girl after he's detoxed.
That's a great point.
He sits there and he says, I'm after these people and they can't do this to me again. I won't let them do this to me again. He even so much as gets that trap while trying to escape while the water's about to fill up. He sits there and doesn't escape just so he can prove that he's over the drug and now he can beat up the criminals. He doesn't even go to think, well, what if these people are doing something worse on the island? If he wasn't sitting there for 3 days, how many people could he have saved at the end if the general turned into those hulking monsters?
You're absolutely right. Something that separates Batman from these 2 criminals throughout the book, one of the big parallels, is that Batman sympathizes with children who are hurt or who have had something taken away from them. And like you said, there's a bit of a parallel going on with his own backstory and why he cares about this girl that dies and that he feels responsible for. Then you've got the very father of her that allowed that to happen. Then you've got the general who uses his own son as a guinea pig, and neither of them even care if he dies. And it's like, it's really morbid. It's really wrong. These guys are really twisted people. And I somewhat resisted even how extreme their personalities were. I thought they were really over the top. But one thing that, but the big thing that separates them is that Batman cares about their children, and they don't care about their children. And it bugged me that you, especially now that you say that you get to the end and you don't have Batman having that line where he goes up against them and how dare you treat your children this way. I would have liked that.
Right. That whole part 4 and 5 I kind of take issue with because the General's son, Tim, he has like this small romance with a girl of Santa Prisca. And over time, as they're experimenting on him, he gets less and less affectionate and more twisted.
Right.
There's a point where his dad tells him to kill her, and he doesn't have a second thought about it. But then at the end, when Batman kills his father, he's crying. I didn't really see where the emotion came from there. Also, in the 4th issue of it, why did Batman bring Alfred to the island? Alfred is just there to be in danger. I'm not sure if he brought Alfred to prove to him that he's going to get these criminals back, or if he just kept him there in case he gets back on the drug, but it's never explained. And he just kind of messes Batman's plan up a little bit.
You're right, because, I thought of that, I thought it was a good, thing thematically to do. I'm with you. I don't think it makes any sense, within the context of the story. I think it's a device to make something thematic happen. I think the idea is when Batman starts getting on this Venom, and the reason he does in the first place is he wants to be someone who can't, who nothing can stop him. He doesn't need anything but his own, mental and physical prowess. He realizes that that's not the case when he gets in the drugs. He feels ashamed about that, and he can't deal with Alfred at that point because he feels ashamed about it. And so, by putting Alfred in danger, it reinforces how much he needs him, and it reinforces how important it is that Batman relies on people and not on himself or on some quick fix like a drug. So I think putting Alfred in danger in this story is a great idea. I think the way it's done doesn't really play out right.
And it's kind of necessary also because Alfred quits in the middle of the story and Bruce has no reaction to it until after he comes back.
Yeah.
So if they just went on with that relationship, it'd be a little bit strange.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he has to.
They do need scenes with Alfred. It's just the way it plays in the plot I don't really understand.
Well, I think it's important that he has this he comes to this understanding of what he really lost, or what he almost really lost. I'm not sure that thematically that pays off completely, because it does kind of just unfold into a into kind of just a kidnapping plot at the end. Nothing's really done with it, idea-wise, after they get him back or anything. There's no conversation about it, so...
Right, as soon as Bruce comes out of the cave, it kind of degenerates into more of an action-adventure story on
It does.
Island.
Yeah, it does. And I think that it's easy to fall in that trap when you go somewhere kind of exotic, and, you get Batman out of his comfort zone. You get Batman, you're drawing Batman during the day on an island, and it's easy to go, oh, cool, now we got to do this kind of, action-y James Bond thing. But this is a really heavy story, and there's
only 5 issues in 1991. That's pretty dense material.
Yeah, and it's really, really heavy stuff. So you don't really want it to degenerate into an action thing. I think it still has emotional weight at the end. I just don't think that it's quite as smart as it was early on.
Yeah, I do feel for Tim at the end when his father does die. It's just story-wise, I don't see why it would happen.
No, I'm with you. I feel for him. His father's a reprehensible human being, so I don't mind that he's dead. But I feel bad for the kid for what his father did to him. Right,
and also the scene when the general starts torturing the doctor, and then the doctor makes his son kill the general. Just that whole twisted relationship of both of them having these weird obsessions, and both of them eventually turning against each other. You really kind of see how inhumane these guys are.
Yeah. And
even though Batman may not have the best psyche, he is a really human person because at least he cares.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm glad that you're right. And they took that to the most realistic place. I still kind of question why exactly those two were as extreme as they were. But I don't know. So I think a lot of times in stories like this, you get a little bit of commentary about people who are too brilliant to have any common sense. You know, people that are so brilliant that it kind of messes with their mind because it gives them too much power and that corrupts them, so they go kind of nuts. And then you compare that to Batman, who is always walking that tightrope of crazy and superhero. So I guess it's good in that sense.
Yeah, and Dennis O'Neil really does love doing this thing where he brings Batman to the farthest edge of his sanity, and then pulls him right back. Like, you see that in Knightfall, you see that with Venom. And it's also kind of important to know that Dennis O'Neil has this weird habit of having a contrived ending and a contrived beginning, but the in-between is really good. Like, the story where Alfred quits in Knightfall, that gets wrapped up in Nightwing Ties That Bind, and that has the same problem where the beginning premise doesn't sound right, and the ending degenerates into an action story, but the thematic stuff of Batman needing people is right there in the middle.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Dennis O'Neil is a great writer. It's just, it seems like he's more about the idea than he is about the plot.
Yeah, he's not always as strong at making it happen physically as getting those ideas on the page. Yeah, you're right.
And at this point, he was the editor of the Batman book, so that was probably a good position for him. So he could oversee everyone's plots and make sure the characters are right, even if the story necessarily isn't.
Yeah, I think that's about all I've got to say about it, Steve.
There is just one other thing I want to mention, though, is that this book was reprinted during Dark Knight Rises, and there's two lines that everyone goes crazy over because they were in the Nolan Batman films.
Oh, okay.
One of them is in the first issue where it says darkness is his ally.
Oh, is that in this? I missed it. Okay.
Yeah, they say it twice. It's not really important. It's just funny that it says darkness is his ally, and that's a big Bane meme.
Yeah, but I thought Bane said that in
exactly.
But I thought Bane says it in Knightfall.
No, Bane doesn't say it in Knightfall.
Does he never say it in Knightfall? Okay, all right.
No,
I thought that came back.
There's Ducard, who was in Batman Begins.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I forgot to bring that up. I was going to ask you, since you're like the walking encyclopedia of Batman, if Ducard ever appears anywhere, or if that's the only mention of him in the comics.
Okay. In back when Sam Hamm was writing the script for the original Batman movie, Dennis O'Neil at the time was the editor, so he asked Sam Hamm to write a Batman story, and it turned into Batman Blind Justice. And Ducard was a master assassin in Paris that taught Bruce how to fight and assassinate. And during Robin, A Hero Reborn, he also goes to Paris and learns from Ducard. And when the two got started, Ducard's son became a mercenary called Nobody, who was hunting down Bruce and Damian.
Okay, interesting. Yeah,
Ducard existed before the movie. I guess Nolan just kind of took the name from the assassin in Paris.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, and it's really neat that he went that way, considering that it was, in fact, somebody that helped train Batman before he was Batman. And I guess Nolan kind of developed that habit of combining characters, like taking somebody's name and giving it to somebody else, or giving a backstory to somebody else and kind of combining them. So that's really cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in 80s or 90s Batman that you see a lot in the Nolan movies, just because I think that was probably Nolan's favorite Batman time period.
Oh yeah. Well, and then like I always like to mention that mob boss that they Daggett, that they made up in the animated series, and then he just shows up in Rises. Yeah.
Except they changed his name from Roland
to John, because we don't already have enough Johns in that movie.
Of course. Because Roland doesn't sound cool at all.
Yeah, I don't get... What, is Roland too outdated?
Apparently.
Yeah, why did they...
I don't know what was up with
I remember sitting in the theater thinking, ooh, I can't wait till they mentioned his first name, because I know it. It's Roland. And then they said John, and I went, John? What?
Yeah. But aside from the Nolan stuff, a lot of this book actually comes back in later Batman stuff. You don't have to read it to understand Knightfall, but it's some good backstory. Because they don't call it Venom in this story either, but just because that's the title of the book, they eventually branded it Venom.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. If this stuff, well, because it's still, because I guess even in the single issues, the story was called Venom. So I guess they weren't even referring to the drug so much as just the idea of it's a thing that poisons you, so it's venom. Yeah.
Plus, the Venom that Bane uses is different from the Venom Batman is using right now.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, Bane's on a jail in Santa Prisca, where he's born and raised, and the Venom he uses comes from a psychiatrist who looks like Hugo Strange, but isn't. And the major difference is that if Bane gets off of Venom, he doesn't have it every 12 hours, he gets side effects, whereas Bruce just needs it like every 24, or just because he's addicted whenever he feels like it. Bane physically needs it every 12 hours.
Oh, I knew that, but I thought maybe it was like he needed it more often for some other reason, like he had more of a concentrated dose or something. I never really knew what that was about, but yeah, I thought it was the same drug. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a different drug. It's just the same island. It
Weird.
And I don't think they mention any of the characters from this book in Knightfall or in any of the Vengeance of Bane stuff. So it's basically Knightfall is just the premise, just expanded.
Yeah.
This is basically where it got to start.
Well, that's really cool. We should also mention that Batman fights a shark, that he mentioned shark repellent.
I had an issue with that. I don't understand what happened in the water. He killed the shark, and then he tipped over a boat full of 2 people. Did the shark eat those 2 people?
I'm not sure.
Did Batman kill 2 people in this book?
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I hadn't thought about it, but now that you mentioned that, you have a point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just hung up on the fact that that there's this gratuitous line where he says, "I hope you brought along your shark repellent," and I'm like, in this context, what is shark repellent? What?
Yeah, it was a good callback to the 60s show, but...
No, I know, but I'm just like, all you're doing is referencing a movie you couldn't possibly have seen. I don't understand what that has to do with anything. Anyway, well, I definitely recommend this. I think it's a great history, if nothing else, but I also thought it was a really good read.
Oh yeah, it's a great story, and if you can track down the first printing, I'd recommend that too.
Yeah, I mean, like, they just printed this, like Steve said, with the release of Dark Knight Rises, and it's really pretty. It's got a great cover, but I wish I had Steve's, because he's got a forward I didn't get, and I want to read that forward, so...
Yeah, it's only like 2 or 3 pages, but it's just Dennis O'Neil talking about how the story arc style got started over the one-shot style, and how Knightfall first began, so it's pretty interesting. This was being written or printed during Knightfall's inception, so Knightfall hadn't even happened yet. It was just them discussing what Knightfall will be.
Well, everybody,
really interesting.
Well, everybody, thanks as always for watching the Comic Book Vault. Really hope you enjoyed it. And Steve, come back with me again. Let's do more Batman sometime soon.
All right, great.
And if you'd ever like to send us anything to review on the Vault, you can always send that to our P.O. Box. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. And thanks again for watching. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Steve.
See you later.